RTV6, Indianapolis This Week.
A big week ahead in Washington as all eyes are on the investigation into possible Russian interference in the 2016 election. A member of the president's cabinet, Education Secretary Betsy Devos, is scheduled to visit Indianapolis to deliver a policy speech. But first, Governor Holcomb is pledging to remain involved in the debate on repealing and replacing the Affordable Care Act. I asked him what he thinks about states' choice under the House plan to opt out of a mandate that would prevent insurers from charging people with pre-existing conditions more. Would Indiana consider opting out of that mandate?
Well, what we're considering is working with the Senate now that it's moving over to that side, and obviously the health and well-being and safety of all of Hoosiers is chief concern to me. And what I'm looking forward to, quite honestly, is working with the Senate to make sure that folks are looking at how to provide effective health care. We know that, quite frankly, that our healthcare delivery system was broken before Obamacare, and it was now broken during. And so what's next is critically important that we get it right. And I think with our Healthy Indiana plan, that's part of the whole process of healthcare delivery. But I hope that we can arrive at a place, and I think we will, that ensures that not just the peace of mind, but the healthcare delivery access is improved from where we are today. We know that providers are down and premiums are up, so we have to address this in November. Obviously, the people spoke, and moving forward, this is going to be a collaborative effort, and I look forward to having Indiana at that table working with our Senate to make sure that we get this next step right, and that we're continuing to ensure people's peace of mind and their well-being. And so it's a long process ahead, but I look forward to the journey.
What does HIP 2.0 need to look like in the future moving forward?
Well, the Healthy Indiana Plan 2.0, as it is right now, you could say that it'll be 3.0 in the future, and we're watching around the country to see what others governors. But now that it's in the Senate, I want to make sure that Healthy Indiana Plan, that program, is protected and part of the future, and so we'll be making that case.
We're hearing from the state's drug czar for the first time as he unveils a plan to tackle Indiana's opioid crisis. Jim McClelland is outlining the framework to coordinate resources to improve treatment and prevention. That happening in a meeting of the state's Commission to Combat Drug Abuse. Part of the plan is to use a federal grant to increase capacity and access to treatment, adding 60 to 75 new beds in recovery centers.
There's going to be a heavy emphasis on the prevention side, and we're particularly concerned about having much wider availability of evidence-based prevention programs for children and youth that deal with a wide array of addictive substances.
The state is looking at encouraging more drug take-back programs and supporting the efforts of community-based organizations. A controversial abortion law is being challenged in federal court less than a month after the governor signed it. On Thursday, the ACLU of Indiana filed a lawsuit on behalf of Planned Parenthood. The law in question allows judges to notify parents if a young woman under the age of 18 seeks an abortion through the court system. Planned Parenthood says courts have long affirmed the constitutional right to an abortion for minors who are deemed mature enough to make the decision without parental consent. Here's a brief statement from Betty Cockrum, the retiring president of Planned Parenthood of Indiana and Kentucky. She says the law will have a chilling effect on teens already dealing with a difficult situation. Bipartisanship on Capitol Hill. Indiana's U.S. senators are teaming up to secure more mental health support for police. Republican Todd Young and Democrat Joe Donnelly are advocating for a bill that would direct the Justice Department as well as Health and Human Services to develop more resources for law enforcement. The Senate approved the measure last week.
Ultimately, police officers see the best and the worst of humanity, which can take a heavy emotional toll. But who is there to answer the call for help when they need it after experiencing such trauma on a regular basis?
The Mental Health Resources Program IMPD uses is the model for the bill. This week, President Trump is reacting to the appointment of a special counsel to look into Russia's alleged ties with his campaign. Former FBI Director Robert Mueller takes over the investigation into potential Russian election meddling and possible collusion with the Trump campaign. His appointment is gaining support from both sides of the aisle, but Trump himself is not thrilled with the news.
The entire thing has been a witch hunt, and there is no collusion between certainly myself and my campaign, but I can always speak for myself and the Russians, zero. I think it divides the country.
But over on Capitol Hill, one Democrat is responding to those remarks from Trump.
If the president has nothing to hide, then he and the Republicans in Congress should welcome independent investigations to remove all doubt of a cover-up.
President Trump says he will announce a replacement for former FBI Director James Comey soon. More eyes are on Indiana's former governor. Vice President Mike Pence has filed paperwork to form a political action committee less than 5 months into President Trump's term. The filing for the Great America Committee offers few details on how Pence intends to use the money that's raised. The only note being that the committee either supports or opposes more than one federal candidate. Pence is scheduled to deliver the commencement address at the University of Notre Dame later this morning. Two high-profile figures will be in Indianapolis this week with their main focus on education. On Monday, U.S. Secretary of Education Betsy Devos will speak at the summit for the American Federation for Children. That group lobbies for school choice. According to a Politico report, Devos is expected to unveil a proposal for an education tax credit scholarship. Then on Tuesday, former Republican presidential candidate and former governor of Florida, Jeb Bush, will deliver a keynote address. Devos's visit to Indianapolis is already drawing criticism. The president of the Indiana State Teachers Association is releasing a statement ahead of the speech on Monday, writing the Trump-Devos agenda threatens to shrink rather than to expand students' chances for success. The man who changed the way cable news covers politics died this week. The founder of Fox News Channel, Roger Ailes, died at the age of 77 on Thursday. Ailes was a former Nixon aide. He played a role in shifting the political debate to the right. Without him, experts say the GOP's current control of Washington may not have been possible. His death comes a short time after his public downfall due to numerous allegations of sexual harassment. Up next, the investigation into possible Russian interference in the election and the implications for President Trump and Vice President Pence. Our political insiders weigh in.
Central Indiana Honda dealers today.
Welcome back. We are joined by our political insiders, Abdul Hakim Shabazz, John Zodi, Mary Beth Schneider. Thanks for being here. It has been a whirlwind couple of weeks in Washington, to say the least, right? What now for President Trump? How do you think this plays out?
Let's put it this way. Donald Trump has managed to do in less than 6 months what takes most administrations 6 years to do. Special prosecutors, counsels, investigations. It'd be nice if they could just focus on the stuff that matters. Focus on education. Focus on, jump-starting the economy, decreasing the regulatory reform. But as long as Donald Trump, stays on Twitter contradicting his staff, none of that is ever going to happen.
I think, I'm not sure I would agree that most presidents have had, it takes most presidents, I'm not sure any president has had this happen to them in the first 3 months, in the first 6 months, first 2 years of their administration. And on top of that, this is a president who continues to make all of us feel very insecure, both economically and from a national security perspective. So I think there are real concerns that he continues to try to distract the American people from the real issues that are happening and making all of us feel very, very insecure and uncomfortable.
I know there's a lot of talk even already about the possibility of a President Pence. I think people have gotten way too far ahead of themselves. I think impeachment remains unlikely. I cannot even fathom him resigning. He's not that kind of a personality. But what we could see is continued drip, drip, drip. It does make it extremely hard for Congress to focus on other stuff. They already are in deep disagreement on major issues, and this does not help anybody get to the table and get things done.
What do we need to hear from the president during his first trip abroad?
Well, I think it's going to be
First of all, it's Sharia law, not Shania law. Let's make that abundantly clear first and foremost.
I think what we need to hear is that he doesn't make any great gaffes, and I think, you know, the odds of him making gaffes got to be actually pretty good.
Well, it really does. I mean, this is, you know, the real issues of insecurity here, and in a very serious way. He says all these things within the confines of the United States, and when he goes out there, you talk to people overseas, were very concerned when he was elected. He's continued to perpetuate this notion that he's not very well informed, and that he continues to distract. He's not getting much done, and so I'm not sure exactly what he's going to talk about when he goes.
But I will say this: I respectfully disagree. The president is capable of staying on script when he decides to stay on script.
Until he goes on Twitter.
I find that.
If you go back to his first joint address to Congress, he stayed on script, didn't deviate. It was almost boring.
One speech.
One speech. Now here's an opportunity for him to do that. Again, but you got to stay on point and resist your gut instinct to respond to everything.
I think we all just have to remember that Twitter, he'll be like 3 or 4 time zones behind, so we'll have to look at Twitter at different times of the day to see what he does. It'll be in the middle of the afternoon or something when he's posting something on Twitter.
Well, Mary Beth, you touched on it. Vice President Pence, what are the implications, if any, at this point? I know we saw him file the paperwork to start a new political action committee this week.
His problem right now is that his own credibility has been really harmed. I was listening to former Republican Congressman Joe Scarborough, and he was dead on. What he said was that right now Pence is in the position, he has come out several times now where he has said something that's been contradicted, or we learned later that that wasn't true. So either he was lying then or he was lied to. Probably more likely the latter, but at some point, you know, he has got to stand up, make it clear within that White House, I'm not the patsy here.
Abdul, do you agree with that? You think his credibility has been harmed?
I don't think his credibility, I don't think anybody who works for Donald Trump's credibility has been harmed, because all the focus and attention has been on Donald Trump, because everybody knows no matter what you say, odds are the president at some point in time is going to probably come back and contradict you at a later date. So I think they're all in the same boat. If you're Mike Pence, I just say keep your head down and doing what you're doing. You have nothing to gain from coming out and actively saying go Trump. You have nothing to gain from contradicting the president. You know, you're almost in sort of that catch-22. So build your political action committee, raise money for congressional candidates, and then if an opportunity happens to present itself, because I've argued Mike Pence is the luckiest man in politics, you never know.
I think the fact that he's been such a quote-unquote loyal soldier to the president, been by his side every time when he's been in the Oval Office, gone out and defended him, as Mary Beth said, and been contradicted later. I think the fact that he's been nowhere to be seen for the last few days is telling, and he has to make a decision now whether he's going to stand up or whether he's going to continue to be in hiding.
Betsy Devos, going to be in town tomorrow, giving a big speech, school choice group. What do we hear?
Well, what we're going to hear is that President Trump's budget that Betsy Devos is going to come and advocate for cuts $11 billion from education. This includes $500 million from a work-study program for college affordability. It cuts the Special Olympics. It cuts programs that will allow then for public tax dollars to go toward private schools that we don't know for sure lead to success for kids.
Abdul, 15 seconds. What do you think?
I've always been a big believer in school choice, and the more choice and opportunity you give parents to control their own children's destiny and education is better.
Okay. We'll continue talking on social media. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Ahead of Central Indiana City could lose its only grocery store. While I could be on the line for one community if Marsh closes.
It's going to hurt a lot of people in Tipton. It really is.
Fresh food may soon be hard to find in one Indiana community. Tipton has one grocery store. It is Marsh. But if the bankrupt company doesn't find a buyer soon, all locations could shut down. Here's RTV6's Chance Walser with what people in Tipton are doing to prepare for the worst-case scenario.
Welcome to Tipton, a city of about 5,000 people, and one full-service grocery store, the Marsh on Jefferson Street. Barbara Reagan has been shopping here for more than 30 years.
We just run by from work and stop by about every night.
That will change, of course, if this store closes, which it could. The supermarket chain recently filed for bankruptcy and will close all stores if a buyer is not found in the next 7 weeks. For Barbara, it would be inconvenient to drive to the next closest supermarket in Noblesville or Kokomo.
I think it's going to be bad, really bad.
For others,
there are a lot of elderly people in Tipton that don't have cars.
The void could create a dire situation.
We're assuming that it's going to close, and now we're trying to develop what strategies can we do to make the transition easier.
Chamber of Commerce President Keegan Schmicker has a plan. He's working with partners now to create a system where those in need can submit their shopping list to a volunteer group. Those volunteers will then drive out of town to fill the order and deliver it to the recipient's doorstep.
Oh, I think they need to get on it. They really do.
We know this store is profitable and somebody else will come to town. This is strictly temporary, and we're just trying to make that transition period as painless as possible for the seniors who need that food but otherwise wouldn't be able to get it.
Organizers say several people from church groups have already raised their hands, willing to run the errands of those who might not be able to. Chance Walser, RTV6.
Organizers say they plan to do a few test runs before the local marsh potentially closes. Their goal is to have a pilot group filling orders in the next few weeks. Call 6 Chief Investigator Rafael Sanchez is learning the first wave of job losses at Carrier will start in July. July 20th is the final day on the job for about 300 workers. The union tells Call 6 Investigates that 136 of those are voluntary separations. The rest are regular layoffs. It's unclear how many of those jobs are being shifted to Carrier's operation in Monterrey, Mexico. Another wave of layoffs is expected at the end of the year as Carrier shifts its fan coil division to Mexico. Diners in Indianapolis will soon have fewer options. Long Branch at 22nd and Delaware is closing just months after opening its doors. 6 months to be exact for the Asian fusion restaurant on the ground floor of the new Delaware apartments. It opened back in November, but for reasons still unknown, Long Branch, which had several good reviews, announced on its Facebook page that it's closed. Meanwhile, the Elbow Room, under one owner or another, has been at this intersection of Penn and North Streets since 1933. The current owner, which manages several other popular restaurants in town, told employees they'll have jobs at one of his other establishments. This property, which is in the middle of a downtown housing boom, will go up for sale or lease. The last year here to grab a food or a drink is May 27th. Time now for I Say, You Say, and this week's edition of our special guest commentary is timely. We're 1 week away from the greatest spectacle in racing. Joining us now from the track and welcoming you to Race Week, the president of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, Doug Bowles.
As the eyes of the world begin to focus on Indiana and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and the Indy 500 as we lead into the 101st running of this great race, I step back and think about why we're here and the people, the men and women who've served our country over the last 200 years to keep us free. Race Day is Memorial Day, and one of the best things what we do as Hoosiers is not just celebrate things through back home again in Indiana, but celebrate those men and women who've kept us free. It is Memorial Day weekend, and while we're here to watch a race, we're really here to celebrate those men and women who've kept us free. And in fact, we begin that the weekend before the Indy 500 with our Armed Forces Day as we send men and women, young men and women, off through an enlistment ceremony who are going to go serve our country. As we think about Memorial Day weekend, and as you either come to celebrate at the Indy 500 or whether you're just walking through the mall or the airport or cutting the grass in your backyard, think of those men and women who sacrificed. Some of them have given the ultimate sacrifice. It is those people, not just race car drivers, but it is those people, men and women, who've served our country that make us so great. Please thank a veteran and don't forget them in your prayers and your thoughts this Memorial Day weekend.
Thank you, Doug, and we want to know what you say. Chime in on social media, the RTV6 app, or at the IndyChannel.com.
$95 per month for the first 3 months.
We want to bring you up to speed on the latest breaking news. An Amber Alert has been issued for this little boy. Police say he was abducted by his own mother, who does not have custody of him. I want you to take a good look at 1-year-old Solomon Rhodes and his mother, Andrea Rhodes. They were last seen about 45 minutes south of Indianapolis in Hope, Indiana. She's believed to be driving a gray 2003 Chevy Blazer with the plate XVK 853. And we are learning more information about the suspect. In the last month, Andrea Rhodes was arrested, accused of driving while drunk with her child inside the vehicle. A witness told police she ran off the road several times, then allegedly tried to get that caller to crash their vehicle by slamming on her brakes. Police say she then struggled with law enforcement and was preliminarily charged with resisting law enforcement and for possession of marijuana. If you have any information, go ahead and contact the Columbus Police Department. Welcome back to Indianapolis this week. I'm Lauren Casey. It's time for a special edition of The Six. We're in the racing capital of the world, so this week we're talking all about the Motor Speedway. Let's start with some laps. The Last Row Party takes over the Pagoda on Thursday night. This event is a roast of the 3 drivers who will find themselves in the last row heading into the Indy 500. Funds from this event will help the Indianapolis Press Club provide scholarships and internships for journalism students across our state. Well, this race weekend, take time to remember those who served our country with a special memorial service. The 500 Festival Memorial Service takes place at the Indiana War Memorial downtown on Friday. This event starts at noon. Also on Friday, it's Carb Day at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The gates open to the public at 8 a.m. You can catch all the final practices for the 500 as well as the Indy Lights race. And then the concert kicks off that night featuring Steve Miller Band and the Bare Naked Ladies. Well, you can soak in the pageantry and see the larger-than-life floats at the IPL 500 Festival Parade on Saturday. This annual event features celebrities, bands, IndyCar drivers, and more. They will march through downtown starting at noon on Saturday. We'll take a trip to Turn 4 for the Firestone Legends Day concert the night before the big race. Country music star Keith Urban takes the infield stage along with special guests Dustin Lynch and Clayton Anderson. And start your engines for the biggest day in racing. The 101st running of the Indianapolis 500 takes over the Motor Speedway next Sunday. Now, before you head out to the track, be sure to tune into our Breakfast at the Brickyard show for everything you need to know about the race. That's what's on tap this week. Katie, back to you.
Thanks, Lauren. We've told you the courageous story of IndyCar driver John Andretti and his ongoing battle with colon cancer. This week, a big announcement at the track as part of Andretti's new Check It campaign. Every car running in both the Indy 500 and the Brickyard 400 will have a Check It decal. The campaign encourages everyone to get regular colonoscopies to catch colon cancer early when it is most curable. The Great One is coming back to Indianapolis. Last week, the Indy Fuel announced that hockey legend Wayne Gretzky will return to the city where he first played professionally in 1978. Gretzky will be in town next January to drop the puck. He'll start the ECHL All-Star game at the Indiana Farmers Coliseum. Gretzky started his career with the old Indianapolis Racers of the World Hockey Association. He played in only 8 games before he was traded to the Edmonton Oilers. The Racers folded the very next month. Thank you for joining us for Indianapolis This Week. From our entire production staff, have a great week.